They built the future and paid with their lives. These inventions killed the very people who dared to create them. It started with a dream stitched into fabric. Franz Reichelt, an Austrian-born tailor living in Paris, wasn't just tailoring suits. He was designing a flight suit that he believed could change the future. The year was 1912, and the world was obsessed with flying machines. The Wright brothers had already done the impossible, but Reichelt thought he could go further. His invention combined a parachute and a wearable suit, meant not for planes, but for people leaping from buildings or airships. No bulky pack, just cloth and courage. Reichelt tested his prototype using dummies. He claimed they worked, but the authorities weren't convinced, so he decided to prove it himself, choosing the Eiffel Tower as his launch point. He applied for permission, saying he would use a mannequin. But when the moment came, he climbed the tower in his parachute suit, wrapped in wool and silk, and announced he'd be the one jumping. Spectators gasped. Reporters were there, even cameras rolled, footage that still survives today. The leap was supposed to be the moment his design floated gently to the ground. It wasn't. The suit ballooned slightly, then collapsed. Reichelt plummeted. The crowd fell silent. It was over in seconds. His invention had failed, and with it, his life's ambition. Yet what makes this story more than just a cautionary tale is the context. He wasn't a reckless daredevil. He was a man genuinely convinced he had solved a real problem, a way for aviators to survive emergencies without carrying large parachutes. At the time, parachutes were still being debated. Some pilots refused to wear them because they were bulky, and manufacturers feared it would encourage people to jump instead of saving planes. Reichelt was ahead of his time. Modern wingsuits used today by extreme sports athletes flying off cliffs and down canyons trace their origins to people like Reichelt. Of course, modern gear works. His didn't. But the vision wasn't as far off as it looked from the ground. Oddly, his story lives on not through patents or engineering journals, but in the early black and white film reels that captured his final moments. It's one of the first known on-camera tests of wearable flight, and one of the most haunting examples of a visionary falling victim to his own belief. And yes, to this day, his nickname survives, the Flying Tailor.
Ready.
Long before powered flight became a reality, Otto Lilienthal was already soaring through the skies, at least briefly. Born in Prussia, he was an engineer with one obsession: conquering the air. While others dreamed, he acted. Between 1891 and 1896, Lilienthal built and flew over 2,000 glider flights. That's not an exaggeration. He would climb to the top of hills, strap himself to delicate winged frames, and leap, testing everything from wing curvature to wind behavior, all by trial and error. What made Lilienthal different wasn't just that he was brave. It was how methodical he was. He collected aerodynamic data like a scientist, logged flight distances, and published charts that later influenced the Wright brothers themselves. His gliders looked like giant birds with fixed wings and a simple control system shift your body weight to steer. It worked surprisingly well, at least in short bursts. By the mid-1890s, Lilienthal was a celebrity. Crowds came to watch him glide down slopes in Berlin. Newspapers called him the Flying Man. But on one summer day in 1896, things went wrong. During a flight, a sudden gust caught his glider. It stalled and dropped from about 50 feet. He fractured his spine. A day later, he died. His final words were reported to be, "Sacrifices must be made." That wasn't showmanship. It was the mindset of someone who knew he was at the edge of a new frontier. Lilienthal didn't just risk his life for thrills. He was laying the groundwork for aviation itself. The Wright brothers credited him as a direct influence. His published works were on their bookshelves. Even NASA, decades later, honored his contributions. And here's a wild detail in one of his designs. Lilienthal even tried to create flapping wings powered by the pilot's legs. A gliding bicycle, essentially. Today, restored versions of his gliders hang in museums, and remarkably, some enthusiasts have even recreated them and flown them successfully.
Ready.
Born in Poland and later moving to France, Marie Curie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and still the only person ever to win in two different sciences, physics and chemistry. Alongside her husband Pierre, she isolated radioactive elements like polonium and radium. These glowing materials were unlike anything scientists had ever seen. They emitted energy from nowhere, seemed to defy the laws of chemistry, and lit up the night like science fiction. The problem? No one knew they were dangerous. In fact, radium became something of a fad. It was added to beauty creams, toothpaste, even tonics. People drank to boost vitality, but while radium dazzled the public, it was doing something sinister to the people who worked with it every day. Marie Curie spent hours in close contact with radioactive samples. She carried tubes of radium in her pockets. Her notebooks from that time are still so radioactive, they're stored in lead-lined boxes and can't be handled without special protection. But in those days, protective gear wasn't even a consideration. For years, she worked tirelessly in makeshift labs, underfunded, under-equipped, and surrounded by invisible danger. Eventually, the exposure took its toll. She developed aplastic anemia, a condition believed to be linked to radiation damage to bone marrow. She passed away in 1934. Still, the legacy she left is enormous. Her discoveries paved the way for X-rays, cancer treatments, and nuclear science. During World War I, she even helped equip ambulances with mobile X-ray machines, personally training medics on how to use them. Curie's life was filled with contradiction. She brought light to the world through glowing elements, but couldn't see the harm they were causing her. She earned global fame, but battled constant skepticism and sexism in the scientific community. She gave everything to science, including ultimately her health. Today, she's honored with universities, scientific institutes, and hospitals named after her. Even one of the radioactive elements she discovered, polonium, lives on in the periodic table just a few spots down from the uranium used in modern reactors. Marie Curie didn't invent a device. She discovered forces that reshaped the 20th century. And though those forces led to her quiet downfall, they also built the foundation for some of the most powerful tools in science and medicine.
Ready?
In the mid-19th century, newspaper printing was, well, slow, loud, and really clunky. Then along came William Bulock, an American inventor with a vision to speed up the press and bring mass communication into the modern age. His creation, the web-fed rotary printing press, was honestly a breakthrough. Instead of feeding single sheets of paper like the old presses, Bulock's design used a continuous roll. It could print on both sides, cut the sheets automatically, and operate at speeds that finally made daily newspapers a true daily experience. This machine, it changed everything. Suddenly, papers could be printed faster, cheaper, and in much higher volume. Publications just exploded in popularity. Bulock's invention became a cornerstone of the newspaper industry. But you know, the machine that made him famous also led to a pretty shocking twist. In 1867, while trying to fix one of his presses at a Philadelphia newspaper plant, Bulock tried to adjust a belt on a moving machine. It was supposed to be a routine repair, but as he reached in, his leg got caught in the mechanism. The crushing injury led to a severe infection, and just days later, Bulock died during surgery to amputate the leg. There's an irony here that hits hard. He was trying to improve his own invention when it turned on him. Back then, press operators were constantly working under dangerous conditions. No emergency shutoffs, no guards, no safety protocols. Machines were brutal, fast, and honestly, pretty unforgiving. Bulock's accident really highlighted just how hazardous early industrial tech could be, even for the people who designed it. Despite the tragedy, Bulock's invention lived on. It helped drive the golden age of print, feeding the rise of journalism giants. Even today, elements of his rotary design are still present in high-speed printers. His name might not be as famous as Gutenberg or Pulitzer, but in the world of mechanical innovation, William Bulock left a lasting imprint, one inked not just on paper, but in the dangerous legacy of invention during the industrial age.
Ready?
It sounds like something straight out of Back to the Future, but in the early 1970s, a man named Henry Smolinski actually tried to build a flying car for real. He wasn't just some eccentric dreamer. He was an aeronautical engineer who co-founded a company called Advanced Vehicle Engineers, or AVE. And he had this bold plan: take a Ford Pinto, attach airplane wings and a rear engine from a Cessna Skymaster, and turn it into a personal flying machine called the AVE Mazar. In theory, it worked like this: you'd drive the Pinto to the airport, attach the wings and tail section in just a few minutes, and take off like a plane. Once landed, you'd detach the wings and drive away. No hangar needed, no pilot's locker, just you, your car, and the open sky. On paper, it looked futuristic, but in practice, it was a disaster just waiting to happen. The Pinto wasn't exactly known for structural strength, and bolting it to aircraft parts added a whole new level of complexity and risk. Still, AVE rolled out prototypes and even did several short test flights. But during a demonstration in 1973, something went horribly wrong. One of the wing struts detached mid-air. The aircraft lost control and crashed, killing Smolinsky and the test pilot instantly. Investigators later found that the struts had been poorly welded. The engineering flaws weren't small, they were fundamental. Yet the project had already generated a lot of buzz in the media. News outlets called it a flying revolution. Smolinsky truly believed he was on the verge of something world-changing. He wasn't the first to chase the idea of flying cars, and he definitely wouldn't be the last. From James Bond movies to tech expos, the dream still lingers today. Companies in 2025 are still testing road-to-air vehicles with improved materials, automation, and safety systems. But Smolinski's attempt remains one of the most memorable and cautionary chapters.
Ready.
During the American Civil War, innovation was moving way faster than safety could ever keep up. Among the boldest inventors was Horus Lawson Hunley, a Confederate engineer who believed the war could be won below the waves. His idea? A man-powered submarine capable of sneaking up on Union warships and destroying them with explosives. It sounded like total science fiction, but it became terrifyingly real. Hunley's design was a 40-foot-long cigar-shaped vessel powered by hand cranks. A crew of 8 would turn a crankshaft connected to the propeller while submerged, guiding the sub with pretty primitive controls and almost no oxygen. The submarine was officially named the H.L. Hunley after its creator. From the very start, the sub was plagued by accidents. Its first test run ended in the deaths of 5 crew members. Instead of giving up, Hunley pushed forward. He believed the concept could work. In October 1863, he decided to take the Hunley on a test mission himself. It would be his last. The sub sank in Charleston Harbor, killing everyone aboard, including Hunley. Despite the setbacks, the Confederacy raised the sub, repaired it, and sent it out again. In 1864, the H.L. Hunley made history as the first submarine to sink an enemy warship, the USS Housatonic. But even that mission ended in tragedy. The submarine never returned to the surface. For over a century, the Hunley remained lost. Then, in the late 1990s, it was recovered from the ocean floor, remarkably intact. Inside, researchers found the remains of the final crew still seated at their stations. Today, the Hunley is on display in South Carolina, a haunting monument to early innovation in underwater warfare. Hunley didn't live to see the success of his invention, but he proved that submarines were more than just dreams. They were real and deadly.
Ready.
Speed was the obsession of the early 20th century. Planes were pushing new limits, cars were breaking records, and railways were desperate to keep up. In the Soviet Union, a young engineer named Valyrian Abacovsky came up with something wild, a high-speed railcar powered by an airplane engine and propeller. It was called the Aero Wagon, and honestly, it looked like something out of a sci-fi comic. Part train, part aircraft. The goal was to shuttle government officials across long distances quickly. Instead of using conventional engines, Abacovsky mounted a massive propeller on the rear of a rail car and hooked it up to an aircraft motor. The whole thing looked more like an experimental jet on rails than a train. And, well, it worked, sort of. On its first major demonstration run in 1921, the Aero Wagon reached impressive speeds, slicing across the tracks at nearly 90 miles per hour. Passengers were thrilled. Among them were Abacovsky himself and several high-ranking Soviet delegates. But on the return trip, disaster struck. The Aero Wagon derailed at high speed, flinging passengers and destroying the experimental vehicle. Abacovsky was killed, along with 5 others. He was just 25 years old. The Soviet government buried the victims with full honors. Abacovsky was hailed as a fallen innovator, a hero of progress. Yet the Aero Wagon project quietly vanished. No other models were built. It was too risky, too experimental, and now tainted by tragedy. Still, the Aero Wagon remains one of the most bizarre and fascinating attempts to merge aviation and rail travel. Photos of the propeller-driven railcar still circulate in history books and online archives. It looks like something a Bond villain might escape in. Modern high-speed trains rely on magnetic levitation or electric turbines, but Abacovsky's dream lives on in spirit, proof that even a crazy idea can almost make it to the station.
Ready.
The RMS Titanic was more than a ship. It was a floating city, a masterpiece of luxury and engineering. At the center of its creation stood Thomas Andrews, the chief designer from Harland and Wolff shipyards. He knew the vessel inside and out, every bolt, every bulkhead, every corridor. And when the ship set sail in 1912, he boarded along with it, not as a passenger, but to observe and ensure everything functioned smoothly. Andrews wasn't just overseeing final touches. He genuinely cared about passenger safety and comfort. He carried a small notebook, making observations on the voyage, planning improvements for future ships. But on the 4th night at sea, the Titanic struck an iceberg. Everything changed. As chaos unfolded, Andrews didn't rush to a lifeboat. Witnesses later reported him moving through the decks, urging passengers to wear life jackets and head to safety. He helped women and children into lifeboats, directed crew members, and even threw deck chairs into the water for flotation. Multiple survivors recalled seeing him until the very end, calm, composed, refusing to abandon his post. One steward remembered Andrews standing alone in the smoking room, staring at a painting as water crept closer. He had designed the ship, and now he was going down with it. Though the Titanic was equipped with advanced safety features for its time, it lacked enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Andrews had actually pushed for more, but his suggestions were rejected to preserve deck space. That decision became one of the most tragic footnotes in maritime history. Thomas Andrews's legacy is still honored today. Memorials to him stand in Northern Ireland, and his story continues to inspire films, books, and documentaries. He didn't just build a ship, he stayed with it to the end, doing everything he could to save others. And in a moment that felt more like legend than fact, the designer became part of the ship's story, one written in steel, water, and memory.
Ready?
It's one of the strangest military inventions ever built, a tank with wings. Yes, that happened. The Antonov A-40, nicknamed the Flying Tank, was a Soviet experiment in the 1940s that aimed to deliver armored vehicles directly into battle by air. The plan? Attach massive glider wings to a lightweight tank, tow it into the sky behind a bomber, and glide it into enemy territory. Once landed, the wings would be jettisoned, and the tank would roll into combat, guns blazing. On paper, it sounded like something out of Call of Duty. In reality, it barely made it off the runway. Engineers stripped down a T-60 light tank to reduce its weight. They removed ammunition, parts of the armor, and even extra fuel. Giant wooden wings and a tail assembly were bolted on, turning the tank into a one-time use glider. In 1942, test pilot Sergei Anakin climbed into the A-40 for its one and only flight. A Soviet TB-3 bomber tried to tow the beast into the air, but the tank was too heavy. The plane struggled, lost altitude, and was forced to cut the tow cable. Amazingly, Anakin managed to glide the A-40 back to the ground and survive the landing. But the test was a failure. The concept was scrapped immediately. No other flying tanks were ever built. The technology simply wasn't ready. The Soviet military needed either stronger planes or lighter armor, neither of which existed at the time. Still, the A-40 remains one of the boldest ideas ever tried in battlefield logistics.
Ready?
In the early days of flight, Jean-François Pilatre de Rosier wasn't just a name, he was the name. Back in 1783, he and the Marquis d'Arlans became the first humans to lift off the ground in a manned hot air balloon. Built by the Montgolfier brothers, the balloon soared above Paris for about 25 minutes, thrilling crowds and, honestly, shocking the scientific world. De Rosier became an instant icon. But, he wasn't done. He wanted to do something even more daring cross the English Channel in a balloon. It was more than just a stunt. It was a political gesture symbolizing unity through science. His plan was ambitious. Instead of using just hot air, he designed a hybrid balloon combining both hot air and hydrogen. This was called a Rosier balloon, and at least on paper, it looked brilliant. But mixing open flames with hydrogen gas was, well, really asking for trouble. In 1785, de Rosier launched from France with his partner Pierre Romain. Just minutes into the flight, the balloon caught fire. It plummeted from the sky, killing them both instantly. De Rosier became the world's first recorded aviation fatality. Despite the tragic end, the Rosier balloon design survived. Modified versions are still used in long-distance balloon flights today. And de Rosier's legacy? A fearless innovator who helped kick off the age of human flight, even if it cost him everything.
Ready?
Max Valier wanted to reach the stars, and he thought rockets were the way to do it. Born in Austria, Valier was one of the earliest pioneers of rocket propulsion. He co-founded the German Rocket Society and worked to build rocket-powered cars, planes, and eventually spacecraft. Long before NASA, this man was strapping rockets to wheels. In the late 1920s, he developed a series of rocket cars that thrilled crowds and reached impressive speeds. His work was more than flashy. It was real science. He even started experimenting with liquid fuel rockets, a huge step forward from the solid fuel versions that burned out fast and hot. But one day in 1930, during a bench test of a liquid fuel engine in his lab, something went wrong. The engine exploded violently, killing Valier instantly. He was 36 years old. His death sent shockwaves through the small but passionate rocketry community. Yet his ideas lived on. Valier had laid crucial groundwork for others, including Wernher von Braun, who would later help design rockets for both Germany and, after the war, the United States. Today, Valier's name is mostly remembered by historians and space enthusiasts, but his early experiments were the spark that helped light the fuse of the space age.
Ready.
In early 20th century Romania, Orrell Vlu was a national treasure. He wasn't just an inventor, he was a mechanical genius. Inspired by the Wright brothers, he began building his own aircraft in his garage. By 1910, he had completed the Vlu 1, a strange-looking biplane with a boxy frame and open cockpit. It flew, and that put him on the map. The Romanian army took notice, and Vlu began work on more advanced models. His goal was ambitious across the Carpathian Mountains by air. It would be a historic achievement for Romania and a bold showcase of his aviation talent. In 1913, flying the Vlu 2, he set off from Bucharest toward Transylvania. But as he approached the mountains, something failed. Witnesses reported seeing the aircraft spiral downward. Vlu crashed near the village of Bănești. He didn't survive. No one knows for sure what caused the crash. Some say it was the weather, others blame mechanical failure. What's certain is that Romania lost one of its brightest inventors that day. His legacy remains strong. Today, streets, schools, and airports across Romania bear his name. Vlu proved that innovation didn't belong only to world powers. It could come from anywhere, even a small village inventor with a homemade plane.
Ready.
Carl Sutek was never content with the ordinary. A Canadian stuntman with nerves of steel, he was best known for surviving a plunge over Niagara Falls in a custom-designed red barrel. That 1984 stunt earned him international fame and a wave of new opportunities. But Sutek wanted more. His next act would take place indoors, inside the Houston Astrodome. The plan dropped his barrel from a 180-foot platform into a water tank in front of a live audience. The setup seemed perfect. But during the drop, the barrel spun wildly and missed the tank's center. It struck the rim and crashed. Sutek was pulled from the wreckage alive but severely injured. He died shortly after. What makes the story more striking is that NASA engineers reportedly advised against the stunt, warning of serious risks. Sutek, known for his confidence, moved forward anyway. He believed his barrel could take the impact. The barrel itself is now in a museum. It's a reminder that pushing limits can lead to greatness or disaster. Sutek's legacy is etched into daredevil history as someone who always chased the extreme, even when the odds said otherwise. That's about it. Which case surprised you the most? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.